Welcome back, biology. Mrs. Erickson here. We just finished section 5.1 talking about how populations grow, identifying 4 factors that affect population growth: birth, death rate, immigration, emigration. Talked a little bit about exponential growth when conditions are perfect. So some of my examples were like the caribou, or sorry, the reindeer on St. Matthew Island, the rabbits of Australia, cane toads. And then we talked a little bit about logistics growth, where it forms the S-curve graph. And then when resources are not available, then you kind of reach that carrying capacity. So today's lesson, we're going to talk about limits to growth. Basically talking about 2 types of factors: density dependent factors, which means factors that are related to how many individuals there are in a population, and then density independent factors, where it does not depend on population density. And then just talk a little bit about limiting factors and how that ties into extinction. So a limiting factor is a factor that does control the growth of population. And it can be a biotic factor, maybe another organism, or an amount of a producer or a food, or an abiotic environmental factor, the amount of water, the amount of space. But the strength of these interactions depends on the density of the population, which means that if you have like a lot of individuals, well, then those interactions might be a little bit more strongly due to the fact that those resources can run out faster. But these factors, these limiting factors, determine the carrying capacity. So a lot of times carrying capacity keeps that population size somewhere in between extinction, where the organism is completely wiped out, kind of like the reindeer on St. Matthew Island, or overrunning the ecosystem. So it keeps it even keel, in balance, for the perfect amount for that ecosystem. So density dependent limiting factors are factors that are affected by how many individuals are in that area, and that's also known as population density. So some examples of density dependent limiting factors are competition, where individuals will compete for food. Oh, that's a typo. For food. No, for food, water, space, sunlight, as well as a bunch of other resources. And it can occur between the same species, which we will call intra-specific, or different species, which is called interspecific. You can, I won't use humans as an example, but my cats, I have 3 cats at my house, and they do compete with each other. When I, give them cat food every morning, they like try to be big and hog space so they can munch on that cat food. But maybe they might compete with other species. Maybe, I don't know, I hope I don't have skunks, but maybe skunks come in at night and try to steal the cat food. I don't know. Moving on. Parasitism and disease. So that's another example of density dependent factors, because the denser or more heavily the population is, the easier it is for those parasites or disease to spread. Stress from overcrowding. If animals experience stress, birth rates are going to decrease, death rates can increase. Both of these could occur at the same time. Your book talks about examples that say that chimps may fight and kill their opponents due to overcrowding, or that the fighting can weaken their immune system, so they're more susceptible to parasitism or disease. Females, if they're overcrowded in an area, this is chimps, they can neglect, kill, or even eat their own offspring. So it's crazy stuff. Predation and herbivory is also an example of density dependent. So we have this predator-prey relationship, and I know this is a very blurry diagram, looking at wolf and moose populations on Isle Royale National Park. And blue is wolf and red is moose. And you always see that, okay, so here we have a high predator and a low prey, and the predator population drops off because there's not enough food. So then there's less wolves in the area, so the moose population counters and increases. So then when the moose population increases, now our predator population increases and it spikes. And when it spikes, the prey population decreases because these wolves are eating the moose. And so you get this nice little back and forth relationship going on with each other. Here's looking at a lynx and a snowshoe hare. So rabbits, their populations, the prey population always peaks right before the predator population does. And then it drops off because you have a high amount of predators preying on these prey. So here's a better diagram. I think this one's actually in your book, talking about wolf and moose populations in Isle Royale, but you can see that the prey population peaks, and then it drops off because the predator populations peak. CPV, I believe, was a disease that or some type of parasitism with the wolves. So. Herbivory just means that herbivores are also predators when you think about it from a plant's point of view or a plant's perspective. So herbivores, you know, they can be considered predators as well, but you know, they don't eat meat, they just eat the plants. Okay, so enough about density dependent factors. Let's talk about density independent factors, which means that it does not depend on the density of the population or the number of individuals in that area. These factors tend to be kind of like freak accident factors, weather extremes, very strong hurricanes or drought or floods, natural disasters, wildfires, as well as human activities. Human activities, you know, an oil leak, trash in an area, maybe a wildfire that was caused by human activity. So these are just all examples of density independent factors that affect the population, because wildfires displace organisms from their home, so their population will decrease. Trash, that's just not healthy. Maybe they choke on pieces of plastic. Tsunamis, I don't think I need to explain that. Natural disasters, again, just destroying habitats or displacing organisms. And then I said down here, revisit Australia, and I don't remember why I wanted to say that. I think I just wanted to say that Australia experiences both density dependent factors as well as independent factors a lot because it's an island on its own. And it's very well isolated, so when you bring in organisms, I think this is where I was going, invasive species. When you bring in species that are not native to Australia, yeah, they're going to mess up the ecosystem and the populations of other animals. So, all right, limiting factors and extinction. So limiting factors do not stay the same over time. I mean, like temperatures and rainfalls can change. I know like right now over in the southwestern parts of the United States, they're experiencing drought-like conditions, but that can change. You know, and it does change. We do go through cyclic periods of droughts and heavy rainfall. Space available can be taken by humans. So an area that was once empty now is being developed by humans, and then maybe that development gets abandoned. You know, maybe the prices of living at that area skyrocket, so humans leave, and now we have animals moving back into that area. I don't know, but just know that limiting factors can change. They're very fluid. And so if the carrying capacity does fall low enough, populations can be wiped out, which leads to extinctions. So that's just the tie-in with carrying capacity and extinctions right there. So anyways, that does it for lesson 5.2, limits to growth. So I talked about density dependent factors, which means it does depend on the number of individuals in that area, and density independent factors, which means it does not. Those are just those natural disasters that can change the number of individuals in an area. So anyways, we will continue on in our lesson of ecology. I think we talk about human population next.